Oh, hello. Welcome to the first battle report on my channel. It's the Sisters of Battle Novitiates versus the Thousand Suns Warpcoven. So on this first slide here, you can see pictures of the two teams. To my eternal shame, I had not yet finished painting, I should say, my Sisters Novitiates. They came out on last Saturday, and I've been painting them in every bit of spare time that I have, but they're not quite there yet. Versus my friend's absolutely wonderfully painted Warpcoven. In terms of what we selected, I had all the sort of specialised novitiates, except for didn't have any flamethrowers. Not really a lot of thought has gone into that. I just hadn't built the two flamethrowers yet that I intend to build. Obviously, the plasma pistol and the power sword on the leader, as you would always take. I don't think I would have taken flamethrowers going into this game against Warpcoven, quite an elite team usually. And then my friend's Warpcoven, you'll notice there's no rotary cannon there, and there's no icon either, simply because he didn't have the models, because he has pulled these models from his Warhammer 40,000 army, and he doesn't rate those in 40k. So playing a really unoptimized version of the team there, but he's got 3 sorcerers and 3 normal rubric marines. So we set up the board, and as you can see, this is a pretty narrative board setup. We tried to make it reasonably fair and balanced. The scenario was the escalating engagement, I think it's called, where the first 2 victory point objectives, that's the name of them, say victory point thingies. So the victory point thingies in the 2 sort of starting areas will disappear over time, leaving the 2 in the center here to remain until the end of the game. In terms of tactical objectives, I had 2 of the tactical objectives in the end from the Novitiates supplement. So I had the one where you consecrate ground, where you get extra victory points for taking a tactical objective that you nominate. So I nominated this one here as my consecrate ground target. I also had the tactical objective for Honor the Martyrs. So if my miniatures die while within circle of an objective, the first time it happens I can turn the card over, the second time it happens I score a victory point, and the third time it happens I score a second victory point, but they do have to be on separate turns. And finally, I had Seize Ground, where you hold the middle from the security deck. So I needed to get more APL of my guys into the middle of the table than he had guys in the middle of the table in terms of APL. As far as the Warpcoven tactical objectives, so he needed to secure a piece of terrain at the end of the game. He chose this piece of heavy terrain here. This sort of red building-y pipey thing. He needed to survive, so he had the stand your ground, I think it's called, where you gain points if you have 2 turns where none of your miniatures die, but it can't be scored on the first turn. And finally, he had the Warpcoven specialist one, where he asks me to nominate an objective and one of my miniatures, and then he has to kill that model, and he also has to kill he has to rather capture that particular objective. So again, I chose the same objective that I was focusing on to be the one that he had to capture. I figured that I was already throwing all of my miniatures in that direction, and I'd seen that he deployed kind of the bulk of his forces up here, and I had the bulk of mine down here. So I thought I would be in a pretty strong position to hold that objective. I also told him that he had to kill my Condemner with her crossbow. It's quite hard to see, she's down here. Okay, I knew as a sniper I'd be able to keep her hidden out of the way for most of the game. In terms of the terrain rules, we decided that the various ladders here would be scalable, so they had the scalable trait. Obviously, all along the top here is a vantage point. We thought about making it a punishing vantage point because the Sector Mechanicus terrain is quite high. It's as high as the Chalnas ruins, but at the end of the day we decided just to use the normal vantage point rules, and then everything else it's pretty obvious. So these coloured sections here are heavy cover, The pipes here are light cover. These sort of coloured sections here, and the container, and these little vehicles are all heavy cover, and all of this pipey stuff around here is light cover. Also had a few little extra bits of light cover, a few crates here from the arena terrain set, and just rounding out the battlefield. So it's a pretty narrative battlefield, as I said. Obviously, it's not something out. It's got a lot of vantage, all this big long connected piece of walkway, but it looks really cool, and it was pretty cool to play on. So that's how things looked at the top of turn 1. And now we're going to skip forward to the end of turn 1, top of turn 2, and see how things look there and discuss some of the highlights of what happened. I'm not intending to give you a blow-by-blow of every dice roll. I don't think that is valuable to very many people. So this is how things looked at the end of turn 1, top of turn 2. So let's talk about what happened. As you saw on the previous slide, the majority of the operatives all deployed on a conceal order, but both of us picked the scouting phase elements where we will get to flip one conceal onto an engage order. So the Warpcovens managed to get one of their Rubricae up here onto the vantage point, buffed him up with various powers from the Thousand Suns, and then flipped him over onto an engage order. Then what they wanted to do was target my Condemner down here that was worth extra victory points, because obviously she's only behind light cover, and being up on the vantage there would cancel the light cover. However, I used some of my faith points to have her count as being in cover from the faith point, rather than count as being in cover because of the light cover. And so, because the vantage point rule specifically says it treats you as being on an engage order if you're in cover from light cover or another model, it doesn't say it treats you as having an engaged rule just in general. So because the source of cover was the act of faith, then that meant that she couldn't be attacked by the bolt gun. My opponent was not amazingly pleased. My opponent was not amazingly pleased by this. Okay, and he did kind of go, "Oh, that's going to be FAQ'd. I don't think that makes any sense." We talked about it after the game, and he sort of said, "Yeah, actually, it's probably okay. It's in the scope of the other faith powers." But in the moment, it was a little bit of a gotcha maybe, but it's only a friendly game. We're both kind of learning the ins and outs of the team. So he then decided to redirect that fire, and that's where you see the damage here. Really unfortunate. He wasn't able to kill nothing. So we've got a model here, the banner down on 1 wound. This is just a photograph from another angle, so you can see the models. This inset photograph here is actually these models down here under this piece of scaffold. So there was the banner here reduced to 1 wound from the shooting from the activated model. I was then able to return fire with my Condemner, who can shoot out of stealth, right? She's got the silent rule, and I was able to knock some wounds off the Thousand Sun and get him down to 8. We then had a turn of Overwatch, and he decided not to finish off the Reliquae there. He decided to take a shot here at the Duelist, and so that's why the Duelist ended up here on half health on 4 wounds there. Everybody else spent the whole of turn 1 in a conceal, so there was only a little bit of fire that exchanged. Everybody else moved up. You can see at the end of the turn, he's handily there on objective there, objective there. I'm back here, objective here, and under here you can't quite see, you can just see the edge of the objective here. I had my Proteus, the one that can generate more faith points, on this bottom objective here. So I was able to kind of mill for additional faith points, which I used to keep myself alive at various points during the match. Faith points, I will mention them more later, but they are an absurdly good mechanic. You can just see my penitent here. She was really hoping to be able to come forwards and take this objective during the turn for some early victory points. However, the Thousand Suns have a psychic power, which essentially what it does is it knocks a circle off your movement. It stops you being able to use that circle for charging, but it also, crucially, it knocks your dash down to 1 inch. And so she was able to move. If she'd be able to get the dash, she would have been able to get onto that objective and score me some lovely early victory points there. But unfortunately, it was not to be. So at the end of turn 1, we both scored 2 points for the primaries, and for the secondaries, I didn't have central control. I hadn't scored any points from my special objective. He obviously hadn't got any endgame scoring. He wasn't able to score, not take no casualties in the first round, and he hadn't managed to obviously take this objective or to kill my crossbow lady, although not for want of trying. So now we're going to skip forward in time and we're going to look at how things were at the end of turn 2 and the top of turn 3. So we go into the top of turn 3. You can already see with these dice on the screen there's going to be a story in this turn, and all these orange wound dice that have appeared on the map, there's going to be a lot of stories to happen in this turn. I will say that the photograph I've taken here is not the best. Essentially, a load of things happened in this turn. It was kind of the big turn for violence. He was able to use his sorcerer up here to use the warp blast power to do a lot of wounds down here, and then another sorcerer here to do a similar but slightly less damaging power to do a lot of wounds here. My eviscerator came forwards, was really hoping to be able to get the charge on the enemies here or the enemies just under here, but again, because of that move blocking power that he had, which just meant that I could not kind of get in there and get the charge because of that circle being removed from my charge, even with the whippy sister giving her the extra circle of movement and the extra APL. It just was not to be. The most exciting thing that happened this turn, at the very start of the turn, I know that I'm going out of order, by the way. I'm trying to give you a flavour of what happened rather than a blow by blow. But the most exciting thing that happened this turn is at the very start of the turn, I used the sisters have a command point ability, which removes the range limitation, and I was able to do that, and therefore I had effectively on my leader, who is just here, had a plasma gun for a turn. I was able to use my plasma gun, and I took out the wounded Rubrique, who was up here at the end of last turn, that my crossbow had previously shot, and so killed that one dead. Really good, really effective. Plasma guns always are. And then because she killed somebody, I was immediately able to double activate another character, which was really good because it means there's less chance for my opponent to get Overwatch. But really, the big story is faith points. So when I first shot my plasma gun, my plasma pistol as a plasma gun with no range limitation, this was my roll, and of course I had said that I was firing it unsafely with a risk of overcharging, getting overheating and taking mortal wounds. Without faith points, my leader would have been dead. I was able to use the faith point to the faith point reroll, where you can spend a single faith point to reroll dice, is not limited. You can kind of spam it over and over again. Obviously you can't re-roll a re-roll, but I just had to re-roll those 1s to 2 pluses, and I managed to re-roll all of them to 2 pluses and get 4 hits, which then he was unable to save, and it took enough wounds off him to kill him, which was really, really good. So I was in a really strong position, because even though I'd taken a lot of wounds from the warp blast, I had a lot of characters on 1 wound. My medic had been running around like mad, sort of healing somebody up and picking people up off the ground, and spending faith points here and there to try and reroll saves and just about save people and keep people alive. And my opponent was really getting quite frustrated with his inability to kill any of them, sort of absolutely 100% dead. So with my apologies, this isn't the best of photographs. The other big thing that happened in this game, you remember at the end of last turn, there was a carrot here on an objective. Obviously at the end of the turn the objective was removed, but the model has been removed. Kind of had a shootout here. So the Rubrique here was able to kill her with his bolter. But before that she was able to put a lot of shots. It was just an auto pistol. I just rolled extraordinarily well to reduce this guy down to 7 wounds with that auto pistol. It was phenomenal. She actually started her turn and she shot, and then she threw out her little extra marker that she can do that puts a little radius of -1 ballistic skill around here. But alas, it wasn't enough to kind of save the day, unfortunately. But that was that turn, and so now we're going to move into the end of turn 3, top of turn 4. So this is how things looked at the end of turn 3, going into turn 4. Apologies, the angle has changed again, so it might make it a little hard to follow. You can see that the things haven't changed too much. My eviscerator here has been killed. Okay, I've moved up the I had moved her up. I'd moved up the character with the whips. I'd buffed her up, but then she had been shot down by one of the Rubrique. My leader went amazing. No, sorry, not that Rubrique that I've indicated. There was another Rubrique stood here for much of the game. Okay, my leader came out, shot him with a plasma gun, killed him, was stood here. Okay, this Rubrique came around the corner, killed her. Because the relic banner was here, I rolled a 4+ and was able to shoot this Rubrique with the plasma gun as well, and thus got 2 more kills with my leader during that turn, which was amazing. But then of course my leader was dead. So, you know, for all my tricks, it's just having that plasma pistol amazing. The wounds here, obviously I'm continuing to plink wounds off with my sniper as I'm going along, but for his part he is dishing out the damage again. Those Warpcoven blasts really killed off quite a lot of my guys. I apologise, I realise now I should have taken many more photographs, but he's killing off a lot of my guys with his psychic powers and his Warpcoven blasts. I'm here, I've on 1 wound with my Relique. I'm on 1 wound here with my Hospitator. I've got 1 wound here with my the Encourager here with the whips. So it really is becoming difficult. At one point in this turn, I had my duelist. My duelist died. She actually charged in at the Rubrique that was stood here, the one that was later killed after killing my boss. She charged in. The rolls didn't go her way. She did some chip damage to him. He killed her, but I did then manage to score a victory point for losing a model on the objective. Okay, so top of turn 4, I've scored the victory point here because my whip girl is still claiming that one. So I'm scoring 2 points there now. I'd lost a lot of models. Okay, so very few models left, but I'd been chipping down my opponent. He's really only got these 3 pieces left out of his team, so really quite a strong position moving into the end of the game. So by the end of the game, really only had 1 miniature left. Okay, my faithful sniper, who you will remember my opponent had to kill for one of his victory points. It's been an absolute bloodbath. He's got 2 guys left. He's dominating the battlefield, the remaining 2 points by the end of this turn, but actually overall I had scored more of my victory points. I realise that I have missed out bags and bags of detail, and I've probably done my opponent a disservice because I've remembered the really cool things that my team did and not so many of the things that his team did that were pretty cool. But I will say that it was probably the most fun game of Kill Team that I've had. I think both players playing with the bespoke teams, where there's so much more going on and the teams are more individual and interesting. It felt really close. It felt really thematic. It felt really kind of on a knife edge at lots of points. So to sum up the final sort of scores, I completed all my secondary objectives. So I ended the game on 12 points. So I had 2 points from having held the middle for 2 turns in a row. You'll remember that I had my banner stood there for a long while, and I had my medic there for a little while, and I had the duelist there in turn 2. So even though he was often contesting with one of his APL 3 miniatures here, I always had at least 2 of my APL 2 models here, sort of contesting that centre point, claiming it for myself for at least 2 turns. So I got the 2 points there. The 2 points having models killed on victory points on objectives, sorry, the 2 points for having models killed and objective points, I scored them pretty easily, as I'm sure you can imagine, and the 2 points particularly for holding this objective for 2 turns I was also able to score, because really my entire game plan with my overlapping buffs was just to get this big blob and to move the big blob into this area. And what happened was, because I had that big blob, because he had that blast power is so strong, and that the thing that hampers your movement, it takes circle off your charge and reduces your dash to a single black 1-inch move, really hampered my ability to kind of get to him and bring my combat weapons to bear. So that was 6 points from the for the full 6 points from the secondaries for me, and then the other 6 that I scored, I managed to score 4 holding this objective in the last 2 turns when it was worth, no, sorry, 2 from holding this objective when it was worth 2, and then there were 2 turns where I held the 2 home objectives, the ones that were originally here and here. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 2 for this one, so 6 altogether, putting me on a score of 12. Whereas my opponent ended the game on 11 points. Again, he, like me, had 4 at the start for holding his 2 home objectives. And in this final turn, he managed to score 2 here and 2 here. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He didn't manage to score 1 for holding this. This was he had to hold at the end of the game. He didn't get that. So 8. He did manage to hold this, so he got an extra 1 for that, putting him on 9. He didn't manage to kill my sniper rifle, and he had the one where he had to survive every turn, but he didn't. I managed to kill one of his models every single turn except the first turn, so 9. But then he's on 11 because, of course, his models were fully painted and my models were not. So at the game end, it was 12 points to the Novitiates, 11 points to the Warpcoven. As I say, a really fun game. I've probably missed out absolutely oodles of tactical nuance. I think, to sum up, I had enormous fun, and I hope that my enthusiasm comes across and that you find this entertaining. I found that every single miniature that I chose, every single specialist had a use. I mean, I've included this photo here because even this, the mace that I didn't bring into bear, she stayed there for the longest time. She didn't really get out and get to hit anybody, but just giving me that reroll all the time on the defense dice, just keeping these characters alive, spamming faith points at them, keeping them alive. The faith mechanic is so strong and so powerful, and it really did make my opponent have a few minutes of, wait, what? You can do what? I think the next game is going to be a lot harder now that he knows what he's up against. Obviously, the Protonus, the Relic Seeker here on the objective, just 2 turns of mining up the relic, mining the points up, and managing to score, get me an extra 3 faith points. Really strong, really powerful. The medic managed to sort of put people's blood back in on a number of occasions. Really powerful. The Whippy lady that buffed the chainsaw wielder. You know, she turned out to be a bit of a distraction Carnivex, that eviscerator wielding lady, but man, it was a really important distraction Carnivex. She came forward. My opponent was really worried about her. It really kind of tied up the whole of the right flank for most of the game, kind of how am I going to make sure she can't charge in and things that I can do to try and prevent her from getting in. The Reliquary, which people have kind of identified from reading the cards as a weaker piece, but again, if my leader hadn't been within the range of the reliquary when she died and got that extra plasma pistol shot off and killed another rubricate, I would have lost the game. So every single miniature really pulled its weight. The only one that perhaps didn't was the Dialogus over on the left-hand side. Although, again, you do need pieces to stand on objectives, and being able to throw out an extra APL to somebody else when you're stood on an objective is really, really helpful. I realise I haven't talked about equipment. I find it really difficult to keep track of equipment. I will say that I took on the Condemner with the crossbow. I took the thing which means that when you crit, you get an extra faith point back, and I also gave her the thing that means that when you can discard it once per game and do a free act of faith, because the Condemner bolt thrower really wants to crit. When it crits, it gets to do 2 mortal wounds and it gets penetrating 1. And the faith power to make you get a crit is the most expensive. So having that on that model is kind of an auto take, because it means that you can discard that, and at least once per game you can guarantee yourself that crit. And then if you've got the other thing where when you crit you get a point back, you're actually gaining, you're using the ability and actually gaining a faith point overall. Really strong. I took the same pair of pieces of war gear on the Duelist. Not as effective. She charged into combat with Rubricate. The Rubricate just rolled 2 crits, so I did crit damage, and then I took crit damage, and that was enough to kill me because I was quite squishy and I'd already taken an amount of wounds. I think I could have done with making use of the faith power to heal me, to give my wounds back more often than I did. Probably if I'd done that on the Duelist, she might have survived that bad round of combat. So those were the main parts of the 8 points of the equipment. The last 2 I gave, I don't know, ultimately I forgot to use them. I think I gave 3-up saves to a couple of models and then totally forgot that I'd given them the Iron Surplus, the 3-up save. I totally slipped my mind. So a slight misplay on my behalf. Obviously the format needs work. Maybe I need to find some... The thing is, guys, I'm going to be really brutally honest with you. I am a school teacher. I work a long week. I come home on Friday. I really want to produce content because I hope that it's valuable and entertaining for the people that watch the channel. But I don't want to put too much process on top of my actual game with my friend, that it stops becoming a kind of really fun and enjoyable experience for us and a way to unwind after a long and stressful week. So I had a lot of fun. I'm going to be watching the metrics on the video very carefully and the comments to try and work out, maybe if I just take a few more photographs, maybe the format is fine. I'm recording this after the game, so it's now kind of 11 o'clock at night. I'm quite tired. I've done a full day at work. I'm kind of trying to rush it out while the details, as much as possible, is still fresh in my brain of what happened in the game. Maybe if I was to make more notes, but I just worry that making the notes, I'd slow down the game. So I have to have a noodle on that one. But if you want to, maybe I just need to drop the whole battle report thing and stick to the other content that I've got on the channel. I don't know. But another part of it is, a big part of the channel is, I am a big believer that to be really good at Kill Team, you have to focus, you have to pick a main and focus that team and really learn how it works. And that's what I intend to do with Novitiates. And a big part of the channel is kind of charting my weekly games and charting the things I learn and the things that I learn about the team. I think maybe there's some value to that. Ultimately, I don't know. I don't think anybody that actually makes YouTube videos has a real handle on why people watch them. I think everybody feels like the things that they make are rubbish to a certain degree, right? And then people go, I think your video's really good. So we'll see how it goes, and I'll try and stop rambling about it, because this video is nearly half an hour long, although for a battle report that's quite short, right? So in the future, obviously I've got a couple more videos that I want to get up. I'm just going to try and keep getting a video out every single day. I'm not quite sure yet what I'm going to do tomorrow. It's probably going to be something thinking about the channel and the general and how and people who've inspired me and things like that. So it might be a little bit sort of sideways to the main content. Obviously, once I got the Novitiates painted up, I'll do a full showcase on them. I've got some other kill teams that I've painted previously that I can do another full showcase on. I need to get the Chalanath terrain assembled and tell you guys what I think of that. I need to get the Octarius terrain assembled and tell you guys what I think about that as well. Yeah, so that's where we are with that. I hope the video is enjoyable. I'm kind of in two minds about publishing it. I think I haven't taken enough photographs and I haven't gone over enough detail, but I am going to put it up anyway. I'll let people decide. If you don't like it, hammer the dislike button. If you quite like it, hammer the like button. If you've got a constructive suggestion of how I can improve it, or if you just want to tell me it's a load of rubbish, leave a comment. And if for some reason that you want more of this, then please do subscribe to the channel. All right, thanks everybody, and I hope you have a really good rest of the day wherever you are, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Thanks.